Chapter 3: The Mongol War Machine. Genghis Khan's army was unlike any the world had ever seen. It was fast, flexible, and utterly ruthless. The Mongol military was built around cavalry. Every soldier was a skilled horseman and archer. They could ride for days without stopping, sleep in the saddle, and hit targets accurately while galloping at full speed. But it wasn't just their mobility that made them deadly. It was their organization. The Mongol army was structured in a decimal system. Units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. Discipline was strict, and merit was valued above noble birth. Genghis Khan also employed psychological warfare. Entire cities were annihilated to spread terror and force others to surrender without a fight. But those who submitted were often treated leniently, their scholars and artisans spared and integrated into the empire. Chapter 4: Conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire. One of Genghis Khan's greatest campaigns was against the Khwarezmian Empire in 1219. The conflict began when the Shah of Khwarezm executed a Mongol trade caravan and then a Mongol ambassador. Genghis Khan responded with fury. In a campaign that shocked the Islamic world, the Mongols swept through Central Asia like a storm. Cities such as Bokhara, Samarkand, and Nishapur were taken with brutal efficiency. Hundreds of thousands were killed, and entire populations were enslaved or displaced. By 1221, the Khwarezmian Empire was shattered, and the Mongols had reached the Caspian Sea. Approximately 1,500 words so far. Would you like me to continue with part 2 right away, covering the conquest of China, Europe, and the eventual fragmentation of the empire? The final script will exceed 6,000 words and can be delivered in parts if you prefer. Great! Here is part 2 of the video script about the Mongol Empire. This section continues the epic journey, covering further conquests, administration, and the transition after Genghis Khan's death. Part 2: The expansion and transformation of an empire. Scene transition. Maps showing Mongol expansion from Central Asia toward the east and west. Narrator. After the destruction of the Khwarezmian Empire, Genghis Khan turned his gaze toward new lands. But unlike other conquerors, his ambition wasn't merely to claim territory. It was to ensure the long-term survival of his empire. For that, he needed loyal generals, a stable system of governance, and a legacy that could outlast his own life. Chapter 5: The invasion of China to the east. The fragmented lands of China were ripe for conquest. The once mighty Song dynasty in the south, the Jin dynasty in the north, and the Western Xia in the west represented a divided Chinese world. In 1209, Genghis Khan first launched a campaign against the Western Xia. They resisted but were ultimately subdued and forced to pay tribute. Then, in 1211, he turned his forces against the Jin dynasty. For years, brutal warfare ravaged the region. Cities were besieged, civilians slaughtered, and the Mongol siege tactics evolved rapidly. The Mongols were quick learners. They recruited Chinese engineers and Persian siege masters. They built catapults, employed gunpowder, and dug tunnels under city walls. By 1215, the Jin capital of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, fell into Mongol hands. The conquest of the Song dynasty would come later, under Genghis Khan's successors, but the path had already been paved. Chapter 6: Into the West. Europe and beyond. While Mongol armies crushed resistance in the east, their western campaigns shocked Europe. In 1220, Genghis Khan sent a reconnaissance mission westward under Subutai and Jebe, two of his most brilliant generals. This campaign took them across the Caucasus and into the steppes of southern Russia, where they defeated a coalition of Russian princes at the Battle of the Kalkar River in 1223. Although the Mongols withdrew after the battle, it was a warning: a storm was coming. Europe knew little about the Mongols. Rumors swirled of terrifying horsemen who destroyed entire kingdoms and left nothing but ashes. By the time the Mongols returned, decades later, these rumors would become a grim reality. Chapter 7. The death of Genghis Khan in 1227. While campaigning against the rebellious Western Xiao once again, Genghis Khan died. The cause of his death remains mysterious. Some say he fell from his horse. Others claim he was wounded in battle or assassinated. He was buried in an unmarked grave, in accordance with Mongol tradition, somewhere in the Kenai Mountains. To this day, the location of his tomb remains one of history's greatest mysteries. But Genghis Khan's death did not signal the end of the Mongol Empire. In fact, it was only the beginning. Chapter 8. Ogdi Khan and the Golden Age. Under Ogdi's leadership, the Mongol Empire reached its true peak. Ogdi continued the conquest of China, expanding further into the Jin territories. In the west, he launched the full-scale invasion of Eastern Europe. Under the command of Subutai and Bata Khan, the Mongols crossed into Russia, laying waste to major cities, including Ryazan, Vladimir, and Kiev. By 1241, Mongol forces had reached Poland and Hungary. At the Battle of Legnica and the Battle of Mohi, they crushed European armies with superior tactics and mobility. Europe stood on the brink of destruction. Then, suddenly, the Mongols retreated. Ogdi had died in Mongolia. As per tradition, all Mongol nobles were required to return for the Kurultai to elect a new great Khan. Europe had been saved by chance. Chapter 9. Administration and Innovation. Though known for their brutality in war, the Mongols were also pragmatic rulers. They established the Yam system, a network of relay stations and postal routes that connected the empire's vast territories. Riders could deliver messages across thousands of kilometers with astonishing speed. This system allowed for efficient governance and helped the Mongols keep a tight grip on their domains. Chapter 10. Fragmentation of the Empire. After Ogdi, the empire began to fragment as the various branches of Genghis Khan's descendants competed for dominance. Four major khanates emerged. The Yuan dynasty in China, ruled by Kublai Khan. The Ilkhanate in Persia and the Middle East. The Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia. The Golden Horde in Russia and Eastern Europe. Kublai Khan, perhaps the most famous of Genghis Khan's grandsons, would go on to conquer all of China and establish the Yuan dynasty in 1271. He moved the capital to Dadu, modern-day Beijing, and adopted many Chinese customs and administrative methods. But even as Kublai expanded, the empire's unity was crumbling. Civil wars, succession disputes, and cultural divisions among the khanates weakened the once mighty empire. Scene transition. Fade into maps showing the division of the empire. Narrator. From the windswept steppes to the walls of Baghdad, from the plains of Hungary to the shores of Korea, the Mongol Empire had reshaped the known world. But like all empires, it too would face decline. In the final part of our story, we'll explore the fall of the Mongol Empire, its legacy, and how its shadow still stretches across the centuries.